What do you know about Y2K? The mysterious date problem that may confuse some computers when their internal clocks strike the year 2000. What do you think will happen? In the face of uncertainty, people have questions about what lies ahead. We set out to ask some ourselves.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bob Cringely. Maybe like me, you get frustrated by some of the advantages of modern life made possible by computers. Take new cars, for example. This one probably can't be fixed here. We'll have to tow it into town. It's yet another symptom of what created the Y2K crisis. Technology run amok. Hey, I'm Bob.
Bob Flynn.
I don't know. It just stopped.
Just stop.
It just stopped. And now I'm looking in here, and I don't even recognize half this stuff. What is that?
I fixed a lot of cars, but these new ones now are hard to fix.
That's for sure. There's no doubt the computer has revolutionized the world, but for all its benefits, this wondrous new technology has some rough edges.
What's wrong with your car?
Well, it doesn't seem to run. That's a problem.
What kind of car are we talking about?
Well, it's that convertible out there, you know, the
new one.
The brand new one. So you plug them into a computer.
You plug them into a computer to find out what's wrong with them.
Yeah. Where many people see computers as mankind's greatest invention, others, like Forrest, see them in a different light. It's not surprising that people are distrustful of what computers and Y2K may have in store. Well, how is this going to affect you? What's your plan?
My plan is to retire and get out of this business. What else can you do?
My best guess about what's really likely to happen with Y2K is significantly different from what's been shown already on television. There are extremists on both sides, but what's really likely to happen is more like a normal curve, with a few very bad things, a few very good things, and lots of medium-sized things in the middle. Most people don't really even understand the problem. Here I was in St. Helens, Oregon, waiting for a part for my car. What, I wondered, must the people here think about Y2K? The media has been hyping it so big for so long, surely in this small town, I could come in touch with what people really feel about it. There's been a lot of talk about the problems communities face ensuring that their basic services will continue to operate as needed. You get to be the Y2K guy. Were city officials here prepared for what might happen?
There's only two signals, two stoplights in town, a small town, but they're so old, they're not reliant on any type of chip technology. It's 45 seconds for green one way, 15 seconds for green the other way, so those systems will work fine.
It sounded to me like the town was in good shape. They'd checked out and okayed their water system and the sewage plant, and they'd met with the companies who supplied the city's other vital services to ensure they were compliant as well.
And the Red Cross probably had the best advice, is plan for this like you would plan for any other potential disaster. You need to be prepared for 72 hours of being without basic necessities. So if you have your kits at home and everything like that, if something unforeseen should happen, it should carry you through.
Time for a Cringely crash course in computer history. How did we get here? What brought us to this confusion? Well, the simple answer is to blame it on a lack of computer memory. In the early days of computing, it made technical and financial sense to store date information in a shorthand form. Until the late 1960s, mainframe computers were built with memory cards like this one that were expensive and didn't have much capacity. This is a memory card from 1953. It holds 1K, 1,024 bits of information, cost about $1 a bit. That's $1,1953. So if you were computerizing a warehouse or a bank, the fewer bits you could use to store a part number or a date, the better. If we dig still deeper, beyond the technical explanations, to find out how we really got here, we could probably start with a name, Grace Hopper, inventor of the COBOL software language and coiner of the term bug. Grace, who has been called the mother of the computer, was a Navy officer who traveled the world lecturing about her favorite topic, the future of computing.
Course, this is my identifier. And as you all well know, I hope, every record in a computer must have an identifier. That's so you know where to put it and how to get it again. On the other hand, I find that a large number of people no longer recognize my identifier. In fact, I go wandering around airports and people come up to me and say, "When's the next plane leave for Houston?"
What Grace and her cohorts were guilty of is not a particular line of code, but a particular code of behavior. They built a system in the 1950s that pretty much exists today. This system is to blame for Y2K. The mainframes of their day weren't built for only 2 digits. They accepted the software that was written for them in COBOL. And where the programming language erred was in leaving the choice of how to write the date up to the programmers. It was they who made the decision to go with 2 digits. As a consequence, today, when 99 turns to 00, many computers may think the year is 1900. Compounding the problem created by what programmers call memory-constrained environments was the business practice that developed in the computer industry, whereby each new software upgrade was kept compatible with the one before. While this may have resulted in happy customers, it also led to the preservation of the 2-digit year.
The problem is that, code goes away, but the programs don't. The programs live forever, it seems. The backward compatibility is one of the keys of the technology industry. If a product stops working every couple of years and the customer has to replace it, that's ridiculous and expensive. So that means that all the old programs, once they're running and doing really good work, they just keep running, and they don't ever go away.
People didn't believe this software was going to last so long. They didn't understand the longevity of software, of how once you make an investment of, in some cases, millions of dollars into something, and once you build a database and data structures that it relates to, it's very hard to throw that away. And so, as soon as you start looking at the data, you realize that the interconnections between the data are the complex things, and this is how Y2K came into the picture, because if you change the way you represent a year in a database, that has impacts all over to all the software that talks to that data, that accesses that data, that subsequently processes that data and hands it on to someone else. Most people fixate on the clock issues because computers have clocks, but data in databases shared by systems all over the world is a much more abstract and difficult concept for people to intuitively grasp.
Before you go crazy wondering how we got into this mess, keep in mind that there are a lot of things not to worry about, like clock chips in devices. Take this town's 2 traffic signals, 911 system, sewer and water delivery. These are basic services that have provoked some of the most radical fears. But their failure modes, when it comes to dates, are generally not year-dependent. Nothing is going to happen. And even if it did, once we're past the date window and the systems are reset, they should work fine from then on. The important thing to remember is that these physical devices are designed by engineers and not programmers. Engineers know that things will fail and that failures can hurt people, so they try to anticipate problems and prevent them. This is a vital philosophical difference.
This is the brake pad right here against the wheel, right?
This is the brake shoe right here.
Yeah.
This is the lever that makes it operate.
The big difference between engineers and programmers is that engineers work on physical systems that have to follow the laws of science, while programmers are building their programs inside the memory or processor of the computer.
And that pumps oil through some lines that come down into the valve chamber or into the main piston. Without this system, we have a failure. And we don't want that.
A programmer can design a locomotive that's the size of a butterfly or goes the speed of light. And when that locomotive hits the wall, explodes, he just shuts the computer down and turns it back on. When a real locomotive hits the wall, it's very different.
Flight 17.
This is Flight 17, over.
Return to the airfield at once. Your engines might quit at any moment.
What does he mean, engines might quit?
Speaking of big hardware, if there's one thing that's really focused public attention on Y2K, it's the question of how it might affect the safety of air travel. Plane manufacturers and the Federal Aviation Administration have issued assurances that airplane safety and air traffic control systems in the United States are completely okay, and there won't be any problems. As a licensed pilot, I decided to check this out for myself. So I went to the Boeing Airplane Company, and they assured me that Y2K would not affect their aircraft's performance. To prove it, they had devised a test that rolled the clocks of their planes forward to fool them into thinking it was New Year's Eve 1999. And they let me go along to see for myself. 57, 58, 59. Okay, it's midnight, and nothing happened.
Nothing has happened.
That was it?
That's it.
Can I do my victory roll now?
Sure. 10 degrees nose up.
10 degrees nose up.
Bank angle.
And
Bank angle.
there.
Bank angle. Bank angle.
And then pull out of the ground toward the sky.
Bank angle.
Pull.
All right. Now, do you think the passengers noticed that?
I don't think so. It was very smooth.
Come fly with me, let's fly away. If you can use...
So we've heard all the words of reassurance. Airplanes aren't going to fall from the sky. The air traffic control system will continue to work. GPS satellites will continue to orbit. But what if they're wrong? What if December 31st it all just stops working? Well, then pilots will have to look out the window to figure out where they are. Doesn't sound so bad to me. Let's talk about severity and duration. We could have a ton of things go wrong, millions of things, but have it all over in a single day. Would that be a problem? Not really. A few thousand things that bug us for years, though, now that's a problem. The real and enduring problems are likely to be with the world financial system and in big software. In the case of big software, mission-critical applications at outfits like the New York Stock Exchange have been running for years on mainframe computers, sometimes long after they are no longer even needed.
This happens in every firm. You receive a report in every morning, and it's called XYZ Trade Blotter. The report goes on someone's desk. You say to that person, well, what's that report for? Who gets it? You know, the answer might be, well, I'm not sure, but I get it every day.
Some applications are old. They have been tweaked by so many hands over the years and complexified to the point where nobody understands anything. Software is key. The extent to which something has software, the more dangerous it is.
The core problem of Y2K, these missing digits in the century place, is sort of the reason we have a problem. But the reason we have a crisis is because of the complexity of this software infrastructure that we have allowed to evolve more or less unwatched. These systems are too big to change all at once, and they're too complicated for us to change them in pieces. Every time we try to pull out a piece and put in a more modern piece, we've got blood vessels and nerves dangling. We just don't know enough to graft them in smoothly. And so we keep trying, and things don't work right. And it's a very difficult thing to modernize these, and that's because we don't understand them at the level of detail necessary to be able to transform them in a meaningful way.
One of the big ways that flaws get introduced in programs is people are manually managing who is using which word of memory. And because of mistakes, two parts of the program that didn't intend to use the same memory are, and now you've got like a wormhole. So if you have a building and you have 1,000 bricks, if one brick is defective, it doesn't make one of the other bricks fail. That would be a goofy concept. But in software, if you have a bunch of, say, C code, and there's a bug in one part of the program, it can induce a flaw in an unrelated part of the program because the programs are coupled together. The wormhole is this accidentally shared bit of memory. And so that means I can never trust any part of my program. Any part of the program can blow up.
And speaking of big software, what about the federal government? Well, 40 federal programs have already admitted that they won't be making their Y2K deadlines, including food stamps and Medicaid, which won't be ready until December, leaving hardly any time for testing. And what about Social Security? Will those checks go out on time? What are the chances of real problems?
Federal government is going to be, I think, 100% ready. The OMB quarterly reports to the public and the Congress have shown that 92% of the mission-critical systems of the government met the President's March 31, 99 deadline, a deadline earlier than any other industry. Nationally, we think that beyond the federal government, the critical infrastructure systems are going to hold. There's no evidence we'll have any failure of the power grids. Telecommunication system will work. The air transport and other transportation systems are going to work. The banking system actually has always been ahead of everybody else. We think that there will not be a banking problem. If you move into the second tier in terms of states, the states run for us 10 major federal programs: unemployment insurance, Medicaid, food stamps, income maintenance programs. All of them say they're going to be done, but a number of them are going to be done late in the year. And what we're working with them is saying they have to now, and we're in the process of doing that, satisfy us that they have appropriate contingency and backup plans. Some of it will be paper processing, the eligibility determinations made on the spot rather than electronically. It'll be more cumbersome, less efficient, more costly for the states perhaps to run, but we're going to make sure that in every one of those states that can't deliver on its responsibilities, that there's a backup plan so that the beneficiaries get the benefits to which they're entitled to.
Why are people so afraid of computers at the end of the century? Y2K mania is why. Survivalists have generally been looking for excuses to pitch their tents and hide from the world. They're gratefully leaping on Y2K and heading for the backcountry.
We're just going to the hills to rough it for a while.
For a while? For the rest of your lives, looks like.
Maybe.
So who are these Y2K extremists anyway? The ones stockpiling canned goods and heading for the hills. Well, many of them are people with distinct religious and survivalist convictions. And much of the literature is religious too. It's hardly surprising considering Y2K also ushers in the new millennium.
In some ways, because he didn't have to live with me.
Michael Dowd, who was once a minister, now calls himself a community organizer and devotes much of his time to advising the public on Y2K issues from an urban perspective. He stocked his basement with supplies to tide over himself and his neighbors should the worst occur.
So, Michael, this is your basement and Y2K headquarters?
And Y2K Central, yeah.
Dowd has enough food and supplies down here to last 8 adults for about 3 months. He doesn't think the Y2K problem will persist quite that long, but the information he's gathered from literature and videos and the internet has him concerned enough that he's turned almost evangelical on the subject.
I actually personally believe we're going to go into at least a 5-year recession, and it could even turn out to be a depression. There may only be a 30% chance. Maybe it's only a 10% chance. It just makes sense, in my mind, to be prepared and help others be prepared for whatever level they can be prepared. Stock up what you can. I mean, don't hoard. Don't take more than, than is fair. But at this point, find ways of being of assistance to others who are less fortunate or more vulnerable, those who would be impacted more quickly and more painfully if Y2K does turn out to be a big deal.
So I'm buying a new house. Is this a mistake?
Well, I'm not a financial expert.
Michael Dowd's point of view is mild compared with some others we talked to who see little safety in numbers. Joe, for instance, is a truck driver who fears Y2K is a government plot, and he's thinking of trucking for the hills. Are you prepared for any eventuality?
Oh, yeah, because I have my mind right. I mean, I think about it, so it's not going to jump up and bite me.
Where Michael Dowd is content to hunker down in the inner city and wait for things to blow over, Joe is preparing for the long haul and the possibility that Y2K may shut the economy down completely and that people will panic.
They're going to be rushing out with the money they just took out of the bank to get food and other supplies, which is going to cause a drain on those markets, which expands. I mean, you see what I'm saying? It's just a big ball that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And unfortunately, the media, all the national media, has hyped Y2K to such an extent that if nothing happens, nothing whatsoever, we're still going to have trouble. Because people perceive there will be a problem.
What if nothing happens?
Great. I'm an optimist. I hope nothing happens. I believe that it's going to be a ripple. But on the other hand, I'm kind of pragmatic. So from that standpoint, I prepare for the absolute worst.
Are you packing?
Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, I'm not going to, if it looks like it's going to break, I am not staying in town, that's for sure. I'm going away because, you know, the large metropolitan areas are going to be a mess if panic hits.
Joe's main concern is human nature. He's prepared, but others aren't. And there's the rub. If Y2K sends things into a tailspin, other people may want what he has. So he has to stay light and mobile.
I've got 3 changes of clothes in here, and they're not this kind of clothing. They're more of a, well, they're military dungarees type of things, and I can keep all my good supplies in here. And if something happens, I'm in a place where I need to bug out right now. I'm not worried because I can survive on what's inside here.
So I notice you've got your free Y2K check coupon here. Mm-hmm. So do people bring in a lot of these?
There's been a few brought them in, yeah. That's kind of a service I provide, to just give them a free checkup and whatnot, and they can see, and then if it's not, I can give them some options and tell them whether it's really important or not.
Do you find people who are coming in here really worried?
There are a few people, but it's like everything else, you know. I mean, you always have your extremists that are concerned about this or that, you know, and the world's going to end and all this kind of stuff, you know. Mm-hmm. But basically, most people are not too concerned about it.
So the world's not going to end?
I don't think so, but you never know. Could end tomorrow for all.
Much of what we hear from alarmists has to do with big infrastructure. Nuclear safety, for instance, is one hot button. Another involves the delivery of electricity and concerns for the stability of the power grid. This is a hydroelectric power plant where electricity is generated, then sent on to consumers. I'm curious about the role computers play in what goes on here. Is there anything to be worried about? Despite the size of this powerhouse and all its sophistication, it turns out that the process of actually generating electricity doesn't involve the date at all. When I finally located a computer,
Hey, here we go.
what I found was a system that had been purchased in the 70s that was being used simply for data acquisition, and it could care less about the year 2000. So the infrastructure that delivers your electricity generally isn't date dependent, except for the accounting system used to bill for it. In each case of failure, we have to differentiate between the productive activity and the accounting return loop used to pay for it. Generally, we lose track of the money, not the delivery.
We can look at systems as two basic types, and those two systems usually have a distinct character. The production systems are usually developed with much more discipline and much more focused objectives. And those systems, I believe, are going to be very solid. I don't think we're going to have a problem with power, and I don't think we're going to have a problem with phones. The accounting systems, because they're usually based on something much older, because that was the first use of computers, IBM came of age in accounting. The accounting systems usually have an older core, which has been much modified. And the accounting systems have a great deal more complexity in them because their objectives have changed more over time. Those systems are not quite as coherent as the production systems, so those are where the real problems are most difficult to find and are probably going to be the most troublesome.
Contact.
34, 33, 32, 31.
Radio contact established.
Many people are worried about how Y2K might affect computers that control our national defense.
1, 0.
Others are afraid we might experience shortages of vital materials, such as gas and oil products.
It's all over. That'll do. Grandumpsy, pull yourself together. It's your fault.
Is there a chance that Y2K problems in foreign countries could choke off our petroleum supplies and leave us stranded in gas lines, as happened in 1973, when the country was forced to ration gasoline?
We have looked at our supply chain very critically. Much of our facilities in West Africa, for example, are more or less self-sufficient, and they can operate pretty much independent of whatever the infrastructure problems may be. As far as our transportation shipping fleet, we've done a very thorough job. We have 36 plus or minus tankers. We've inspected, we've tested, we fixed anything that needed fixed. There were some minor fixes that needed attention, and I'm sure that our shipping company is going to be fully ready. I think 99% of the public has confidence in our industry, has confidence in the utilities, has confidence in the infrastructure that we have, because we depend on it, and it operates day after day after day through earthquakes and hurricanes and storms and so on and so forth. We prepare for this type of thing on a regular basis. This got us a little more focused on computer programs and embedded systems and contingency planning. And I think it helped us because we've done away with a lot of obsolete computer programs that nobody was using. They had links all here and there, and we've streamlined that. We've upgraded a lot of our control systems because it was a good opportunity to upgrade them, not just for Y2K, but to get them up to state of the art. It's been a good exercise.
And have you done any contingency planning for a possible comet impact?
Comet?
There will continue to be questions about big infrastructure like this nuclear power plant. We've talked to lots of responsible people who say that their industries are ready for Y2K. The power grid, our sources of oil and gas, our national defense are just fine. But we'll never know for sure until the date comes. Until then, there's uncertainty. Uncertainty leads to fear, and fear leads to consultants. Concerns about Y2K are fueled by people like Andy Kite, whose prediction in 1997 that Y2K would cost $300 to $600 billion worldwide has become gospel. Where did he get that figure anyway? And what's the real number? How much of this number is stuff people wanted to spend anyhow, and now they get to throw it under the unquestionable Y2K category?
A large amount of what organisations have had to spend on year 2000 is fixing the drains. It's things you have to do, but you don't feel very good about. If they hadn't spent the money fixing the drains, they could have done something to make themselves more competitive, more attractive, to deliver better services to their customers. So the losers have actually been the efficiencies that were there to be gained. It's been an opportunity cost. It hasn't been new money, it's been diversion of existing funds.
The most important thing to remember is that life will continue. In a Y2K crisis, your grocery will always accept your check, and your bank will definitely pay the grocery. They don't want to lose you and thousands of others as their customers. Take this thrift shop, for instance. The only thing that might affect business here is if the credit card machine goes down. But then Kay, who owns the place, doesn't do much of that business anyway. If there's a problem, she'll just tell customers to write a check or pay cash or come back later. Still, she has a few concerns.
No big deal?
I don't think so. And I do worry a little bit about public power, public water, and that kind of thing. If they're computer driven, whether we'll have that. But other than that, I'm not too worried about it.
In the short term, we'll probably do crude deals. Why don't I pay you the same amount I paid you this time last year or last month, and we'll work out the details later. Sure, some people will take advantage of it, but is the world going to grind to a halt because we're off plus or minus 10%? No. The world will move on. Take AT&T. This is their network operations center. AT&T sends out 80 million invoices a month. Could they keep the phone system running even if they weren't being paid? Of course they could.
The basic telephony of the communication networks, to a great extent, is not affected by Y2K. Dial tone will be available, calls will be initiated and completed successfully. However, the operational support systems, the OA&M systems, operational, administrative, and maintenance systems, can be affected by Y2K. And that's why we've addressed all of those systems. The networks bend, but they don't break. If excessive congestion occurs, we have flow control mechanisms built into our network architecture that can cause some fast busies, but won't compromise the integrity of the network and servicing the vast majority of its users.
So I was hoping that you would forget to send me my cable TV bill. That's unlikely?
That's not our intention.
As the institutions and companies that put computers in place in the 1950s grew and merged and bought each other out, so too their computing systems grew and were interconnected. And as management fell in love with each new latest and greatest technology, what did they do with the old, non-sexy core stuff? The application software that actually ran the business? They left it here, in the basement. Someone estimated that in the last 50 years there have been 5 million computer programmers, the unsung maintenance workers of the information technology industry. Most of them never even went to school to learn computers. They just learned it on the job. They were the ones who built this software. These programmers were so busy with their individual tasks that none of them saw the whole picture. And now it's 50 years later, and no one understands what those programmers actually did. But what they did is immense. Trillions of lines of code stacked 50 years deep. And this core stuff, this code is still changing constantly until it no longer even resembles what it started out to be. It's an organic, living thing.
By the time you reach even thousands of parts, let alone millions and tens of millions of parts, which is what we now have in the computers and in the programs we write and use, these things can never be. The computational complexity is beyond many lifetimes. Let me give you an example. Microsoft has an operating system commonly used in business called Windows NT. And the new version coming out of Windows NT has roughly 25, 30 million lines of code. Now, if a person, a programmer, were to stay up 24 hours a day reading a line of code every second, it would take an entire year just to simply read the code 24 hours a day, 365 days, let alone to understand the consequences of the interaction of all that code.
How did these systems come to be? The general public has the idea that they were somehow designed or some genius sat down and figured out how it was all going to go together and then built it, and like a bridge, like you would do a bridge. But they didn't just design those systems. They designed a system to do a thing. And then, first of all, they found out it didn't do what they thought it was going to do, so they had to fix it. Then they found out it didn't do a whole bunch of things they wanted it to do, so they had to add to it. Then the situation, the requirements changed because the competitive environment changed or the regulations changed. And so they had to change it yet again. And this has been going on for 30, 40, 50 years in some places. So systems that run our core functions and our core businesses were not really designed. They were more maintained into existence by these processes of constant modifications.
You probably don't even realize it, but you're already being inconvenienced by computers and have been for some time. Say you go to the store to buy your favorite bleach and you find that there isn't any. How did that happen? Well, there's probably a computer to blame. Maybe the computer missed the message that the bleach was all sold out. Or maybe it wasn't even running when it should have sent in the order. It happens all the time. We just don't notice.
The year 2000 problem isn't occurring in a healthy population of computers. Computer systems around the world have got errors in them. Anyone who deals with them knows this. So what you've got is you've got a population where computers have got problems but they live with them, and then they get additional year 2000 problems. Well, the reality is most of them will be able to cope with the additional problems, but there are going to be some who are going to suffer. What we're going to find is that it's the unhealthy ones in the population that get killed off.
This is Fort Detrick in Maryland, a level 4 containment facility where America keeps its most dangerous germs. There is stuff in here you don't even want to know about. Experts here work on ways to isolate, contain, and eradicate these microorganisms. Their goal is to prevent epidemics. Well, in many ways, Y2K is like an epidemic too. Like HIV, it attacks the immune system and not the underlying organism.
There are very few people who use computers on a daily or weekly basis who could claim that they've never experienced an error. Now, what year 2000 problems do is they cause an increase in the number of errors. But they don't put errors where none ever existed before. Now, what this means is that where organizations have had a requirement for systems which are very, very reliable, which have very small numbers of errors, for instance, major banks and financial institutions like insurance companies, they already had excellent systems and they had the processes in place and the skills in place to be able to identify any remaining year 2000 problems and to seek to eliminate them. But there are lots of organizations around the world who quite honestly live with very poor quality information technology systems. So they have lots of bugs every day and they're going to get some year 2000 bugs in amongst them. And some of those bugs will hurt them. But it's wrong to think that year 2000 bugs represent a terminal condition, They don't. They're not significantly different from the other errors that affect computer systems on a day-to-day basis.
Some business function failures lead to business problems and organizational failures. Say one airline's reservation computer system goes down and that airline can't sell any tickets. But an organizational failure doesn't have to mean an industry failure. One airline's problem doesn't affect all airlines. And there are many points along the path where this can be stopped. In this way, Y2K is exactly like an epidemic. Only in this problem, it's goods and services that are affected and business processes that need to be quarantined.
You don't exactly know where the origin of that problem is. It might not be right where you see it. It might have come from another system. It might have come from a system in another company or in another country if you're part of a long international chain of information flow. The closer you get to large, old, interconnected software, the longer duration the problems are likely to be, the harder they are to find, the more random they're going to be in terms of when they let themselves be seen. And that's why that part of the problem is going to go on for many months, if not years, after January 1st, 2000.
Organizations run the risk of small incremental changes, number of errors happening one after the other, not realizing it. And this is why year 2000 can be so dangerous for some organizations. If they're waiting for a pyrotechnic event, if they're waiting for a spectacular sign in the sky, that isn't what's going to hurt them. What's going to hurt them is the death of 1,000 cuts. It's the number of small things that go wrong.
No matter how confusing the situation, the failure of a computer application for any complex, crazy reason does not in itself create a problem. An accounting system may fail, but that doesn't keep us from selling electricity or pumping gas. Computers break all the time, yet we still rely on them, don't we? If this was a banking crisis, we'd be looking for white-collar criminals. If it was a health crisis, we might be looking for terrorists, or at least for people with dirty hands and dirty consciences. Yet for some reason, we're reluctant to find responsible parties for Y2K. Most Y2K legislation, in fact, is intended to indemnify various groups and head off lawsuits. Is this American? The reason we're so reluctant to find culprits for Y2K is because most of the involved parties don't see it as being in their interest to assign blame. The media doesn't understand the situation well enough to even guess who is to blame. The Y2K frenzy is the logical result of the information technology industry that spawned it. A giant game of promises, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, backed by bad decisions. Part of the problem is complexity. We have designed and built and become dependent on systems that are too complex even to understand. Okay. Part of the reason we did this is because the systems worked pretty well. But even more so, it's because we are lazy, and it's easier to patch a system than to replace it. Software development hasn't evolved a whit since 3 decades ago when hard drives were as big as plows. Change in the information technology sector is glacial, and it is often easier on the career of a chief information officer to not do something than to do something, especially since he might be retired before the real problem appears. I read recently that the percentage of big information technology projects that meet their deadlines and budgets and actually do what they're supposed to do is 8%. That's a 92% failure rate. At least half of the big information technology projects are never finished at all. No wonder we'd rather fix than replace. The real cause of the Y2K problem was Wall Street and the lack of professionalism. Up through the 1970s, information technology led to productivity increases in business. It made businesses more competitive. But back then, the computers were simple, the applications were simple, the software was simple, and most important, the big bosses never really saw those mainframe computers that were locked away in back rooms and in basements. Then, in the 1980s, the personal computer introduced confusion. Computers on desktops became visible cost centers. Wall Street began to view information technology as a cost, something to cut. Over time, all the people who understood the applications and could fix them were offered early retirement. Now, this wasn't a problem immediately, because if you don't change anything, computers can run by themselves for a very long time. Information technology departments came to be judged on their size and budget rather than on the value they contributed to the company. To stay visible to the big bosses, they began embracing every new high-tech fad, while rarely extending or updating their existing software investments. Now the end of the century is looming, and it won't go away. We have to do something about this stuff, but what? That's where the Y2K industry is showing that it isn't any different or better than what came before. Remediation, that's fixing Y2K problems, is being approached as a software maintenance issue. We find the bugs, we fix them, and then we test the fix. If more bugs are created, we fix those, and we start the testing cycle over again. What's wrong with that? Well, it's not the only way to solve the problem. Another thing we could do is just throw everything away and start over. Here's a dirty little secret from the world of computers. This is an IBM computer that's at least 45 years old and definitely not Y2K compliant. In fact, it's not even a computer in the sense that we know them today. There's no programming language. This is a program card. You write the programs by putting these jumper wires in these thousands of holes. The only way to make this Y2K compliant is to take the computer out of service. And that's what they did last year. The reason we fix Y2K problems the way we do is because of Grace Hopper's idea that the program is the system, that code is everything. The company that originally bought this IBM 1401 mainframe computer in the 1950s didn't do so to have a piece of iron humming in the back room. They wanted to run business applications written in the COBOL language. Taking any other approach to Y2K risks dethroning software from its position at the center of the IT universe. IT values software. Users value data. Making software sacred forces us to solve Y2K problems in this horribly expensive and labor-intensive process that actually creates more problems than it solves.
One of the first things we did was to start writing more programs to find the old problems in the old code. Not seeing the irony in the fact that we're using the very technology. Nobody knows that these programs are perfect. Nobody knows what they're missing. Nobody in the world. Anybody who says that they know, they're a fool or they're a liar. Nobody can know this.
Ever since people started recording information, there's been a need to duplicate it.
I'm reminded of the great Xerox commercial of the 1970s where this cute little monk, Brother Dominic, approaches his superior with this wonderfully scribed page of a manuscript, and he gives it to the senior monk, and the monk looks at it and says,
"Now, I would like 500 more sets."
And he's just amazed. How's he going to do 500 more? You can't do things that are vast in size and scope the same way you did them when you only had one to do. It requires a whole different set of tools and a whole different set of thought structures.
Here are your sets, Father. The 500 sets you asked for.
It's a miracle.
There's a number of different approaches that are so novel that the software gods are resistant to because it's not software-centric.
Is there a better solution? Yes. We simply tell these U.S. Treasury computers that they're still living in 1972, where the days of the week and the dates are the same as 2000, and where Y2K is 28 years away. We keep the mainframes in 1972, and we run all the inputs and outputs through a personal computer to fix the dates. Now, this slows up the system, so we have to upgrade the hardware, not the software, to regain speed. Thus, we've swiftly solved our Y2K problem without having to even touch any of the old code. It's a simple solution, but hardly ever used. Why? Because the software experts say it's inelegant. What they really mean is it takes power away from the gods of software, the folks who brought us Y2K in the first place.
My sense is that most of the really important systems will work most of the time. It will be disruptions. The computer will be down a lot more often than we're used to, although everyone is familiar with the computer is down, I can't process your ticket, or I can't handle your luggage right now. But there'll be more of that. And what that will result in is fundamentally a slowdown of how things happen. The velocity of the movement of information will in net slow down.
There will be some glitches, as I say, some people relying on particular developing countries that may have difficulties, some international trade around the edges that may create problems for individual companies or even individual areas if you're depending upon a particular set of countries in Southeast Asia that have difficulties. But as a general matter, and we've worked at this with the Council of Economic Advisors and the National Economic Commission, we don't see any indication that there's going to be any noticeable impact on the economy generally. But that doesn't mean that in some place you're going to won't call a company and find out that their holding pattern is longer because they've got some slowdown. But we don't think that's going to be an economic factor for people to have to deal with.
So where does this put us? What can we expect from Y2K? The best I can figure it is the big stuff is going to be generally okay. Airplanes won't fall from the sky. Our gasoline supply won't be cut off. The power grid will remain energized. Nuclear plants will remain safe, and our national security won't be compromised. The big question is how the suppliers, agencies, and subcontractors of those big outfits handle it all.
The reality is nobody can fix the year 2000 problem as a whole, but any individual instance of a year 2000 problem can be fixed. Remember, these computer systems are being managed every day. They have errors in them, and they're being fixed every day. So nobody can say, I can fix any year 2000 problem. That would simply be ridiculous. But for every computer system in the world, there is somebody who can fix the year 2000 problems on that particular system. And those people exist, and they've been doing the work. But in general, what we're going to see is an overall reduction in efficiency lasting perhaps a few weeks. But the reduction in efficiency might only be 2 or 3% reduction in efficiency. There are huge tracts of the world where people simply won't know anything has happened with regard to year 2000. There will be small pockets where they're badly affected. Think of it like a weather system. Remember 1998. If I said to you, was it a bad winter? You'd say, well, I don't know. If you lived in Montreal, you'd know. There they had terrible ice storms, they lost power. It was a really, really difficult winter. Well, year 2000 is going to be a bit like that. Some people are going to say, hey, nothing much happened. And other people are going to say, well, it was pretty tough, you know, but we survived it. But those people are going to be very much in the minority.
The best lesson we can learn from this is that in the future, we're putting all of our lives and all of our governmental and institutional systems increasingly dependent on a variety of technologies that we don't understand what they can do and how they can go wrong. And so that's the lesson, which is that, understand, we're increasing the risk.
My only specific Y2K recommendation is if you're accustomed to buying your essentials with a credit card, take your checkbook with you to the store, just in case. The real danger here isn't technology, but our emotional reaction to uncertainty. We've been here before.
Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror.
Y2K won't cause a recession or a depression. We don't need Y2K for that. If everyone sells their stocks and takes their money out of the bank, it's over. This is not a computer problem. It's a behavior problem. So let's just not do it. It's all up to us. Let's get our financial records in order and enjoy the new millennium.
To learn more about this program, Y2K, the Winter of Our Disconnect, visit PBS online at pbs.org.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12
Next, a television event continues with wonders of the African world. Tonight, Harvard professor Henry Louis Gates Jr. unravels the dark story of the slave trade in West Africa. As the great-grandson of a slave, Professor Gates found tonight's journey genuinely disturbing. The Slave Kingdoms and the Holy Land premiere tonight on member-supported 13. Stay with us.
This is PBS.